Hello there, welcome to my review of the Rockford Files Season 3, Episode 3, The Family Hour, written by Gordon T. Dawson and directed by William Wyatt. The episode begins at Rockford's beach, with Bert Young, Stuart Gailey, buying some food for his daughter before he leaves her alone, letting her know her aunt is about to pick her up. His daughter, Marin, is played by Kim Richards, who had already established herself as a formidable child actor, and in recent years has had a tangential career as one of the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills.
My childhood was different than the average child. I was not just a child actress. I was, the Disney girl.
We don't know why we do all these things.
Young, of course, played Paulie in the Rocky series.
But you kept me around, and other people would have said drop that bum.
And also appeared in Columbo Undercover.
You look like a cop.
So do you.
Gailey takes off when he's spotted by two goons, while Marin is in the bathroom, before we cut back to her sometime later, sitting on her deck chair outside Jim's trailer. Rocky wants Jim to track down her aunt and, despite his reluctance, doesn't take too much persuading. While Jim tries and fails to leave her with social services, she takes off, and when they track her down, Jim promises to make some inquiries about where her aunt is. While all this is going on, Gailey is still being pursued by the goons, who clearly want him dead. And Jim's investigation is going from dead end to dead end.
We find out nothing about the aunt.
This opening is again somewhat different, and it's a much slower start than previous episodes. While we see how much trouble Gailey is in, Jim doesn't, so there's no sense of urgency. But we do get to see how Rocky and Jim behave around kids, and while Jim isn't very paternal, he clearly doesn't want to be. Whereas Rocky is obviously a natural dad. But what we do see from Jim is a natural empathy and compassion that overrides his desire to not be weighed down by responsibility.
I'll call to see if anyone's looking for you. Come on now.
As Marin is watching TV, she sees a news report that her uncle's body has been found.
Uncle Marty's on
Victim of
TV.
an apparent execution-style
Uncle Marty?
And so for Marty Goss, the road ends here.
And it's not long before Dennis calls, having found Gailey's coat by the river, suspecting that he jumped. Not realising what Gailey's wrapped up in, they assume he's killed himself as he told Marin he was sick. Jim and Marin don't believe it, and Jim manages to track down Aunt Cecile to the hospital where she was assaulted by the two goons. And it is revealed that Gailey's sickness was depression and alcoholism after the death of Marin's mother, which back then was sadly referred to as being a lush.
Stu's sick. What's wrong?
Dina was killed in an automobile accident. Couldn't handle his grief. He just hung on to the nearest bottle.
Stu's a lush.
While Jim suspects Gailey is still alive and plans to leave a coded message for him, Rocky gets a call from Gailey wanting to pick up Marin. Jim smells a rat and insists Rocky take Marin to his house. And sadly he's right, as one of the goons tries to pick her up. Jim's ready for him, but not his cattle prod wielding accomplice, and there's a struggle. Jim escapes and the goons take off just before Dennis shows up. Dennis reveals that there's a DEA agent looking for Jim, and it turns out to be a returning Ken Swafford as Agent Jolett.
I gather you don't think Stu Gailey's dead.
I don't know.
Agent Jolett reveals Gailey was wrapped up in a narcotics ring and was using Marin's uncle to trap the ring, but he thinks Gailey killed the uncle, Marty, and took off with the money. After a slow start, a lot has happened, and with all of these conflicting stories, it's hard to know what's true and what isn't. But then that's kind of the point. We do know that Gailey is a deadbeat, but are given good reason. And we know he's a bad father, but also that he does his best to protect his daughter, even if he's no good at raising her. Everything else that's said is up for grabs. Jim's coded message works and he's able to have a conversation with Gailey, who reveals that he and Marty were wrapped up in a drugs gang, but that the feds flipped them both, and they were laying off drugs and money to the feds as evidence. He also reveals that the goons chasing after him are undercover feds working for Jolett and were keeping the evidence for themselves. They're after him because he kept a book on all the transactions, but Jim told Jolett that Marin was at Rocky's, and by the time they get there, she's gone, and Rocky has had a knock.
There you go. There you go.
They got your little girl, Sonny.
Oh, I'm sorry, Rocky.
Now Jim has all the information, including that Marin unknowingly has the key to the locker where Gailey's book is. He's able to form a plan. Unfortunately, it means bringing Angel in.
Streets are fidgety, huh, Jimmy? I mean, both sides are looking for a piece of this slinko.
Angel is desperate for a big payday, but circumstances mean he has to play it Jim's way.
Who's Gillette?
He's the guy who's offering the reward.
Which is a very clever way of bringing Angel in without having him do Angel things. Gailey makes contact with the goon feds and arranges an exchange. Jim meets with the goon feds and plays them into getting Jolett directly involved. Angel, Jim and Gailey all play their parts perfectly, and Jolett and his goon feds walk right into the trap. With Marin safe, the goons down, and Jolett busted, Gailey cleans himself up and vows to be a better dad.
We won't have much, but I'm not a bed mechanic. I can get work.
There's a certain strangeness to this episode that it's hard to pin down. But it's a great story with a great Rockford plan and some fantastic performances. And yet structurally, it doesn't quite work. I think in an effort to be different, certain things have been arranged in a way that doesn't really flow together. The first half spends a lot of time focusing on the girl and her missing father, as well as several red herrings, only to be made entirely redundant by how easy Jim actually finds Gailey, who then quickly explains everything. This leads into a much stronger second half that feels like a second plot, although with so much runtime used, it's now rushed. There's also a lack of tension in the second half, as at no point is there any doubt that Jim's plan is going exactly the way he wants it to. As soon as it begins, it's pretty clear he's in control, and playing the villains, so we're never worried for Marin or her father. I think it would have been nice to have seen some more suspense from the situation, but it seems like the writers didn't want to pull too far away from the father-daughter storyline, which greatly reduced the jeopardy. I can't say I dislike the episode, as what's there is really good. I just think it's a little too disjointed, and with a rewrite could have been incredible. That's why for me, this is a 4 out of 5. Thank you. Goodbye.